Welcome to Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Garner.
The Devil's Registry. Tonight we're going to decode the Codex Gigas, an ancient Bible. Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Garner. Tonight is September 29th, 2025. Tonight's episode is all about the Codex Gigas. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but you will understand what it is after tonight. Yeah. A lot of people freaking out. It's the end of days. They're saying, well, what are they saying? Well, they're saying that the Atlas 31 40-mile long or 12-mile long alien ship is on its way to the world. I say that's a bunch of bullshit, all right? I've said this before. Why now? Why now? When we've got missiles, nukes, and all kinds of things, why would any race of aliens come to us now? Especially if they understand how to bend space and time, because that's the only way to travel through space. So why now? And that is the whole deal. It's because the elite and their cover-ups are coming out. And people are waking up way too fast. And what did Wernher von Braun say to his assistant on his deathbed? He said, first, Carol, this was at the end of the 60s, early 70s. He was dying of cancer, and he told her, Carol, first, it'll be commies. Communism will be the boogeyman. Second, it will be men in caves. That was before terrorism. And third, it will be meteors. And fourth, Carol, the fourth final card, aliens. I believe Wernher von Braun was exposing the elite plan before he died. And he also gave us a little clue on his tombstone that talks about the firmament. So, yeah, dude, they're lying to us over and over and over and over and over. Now, what's interesting, I'm seeing my show, it just redid itself, which is bizarre. It's been going on for a while, and it just restarted. Did you guys see that? That the show restarted? I'm watching it live on Rumble, and all of a sudden, it just rebooted. I saw myself talking. It was a good 30 seconds ahead, and then it went back to the beginning. Did you guys see that? Let me know you saw that. I'm going to continue. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Pretty weird. But I need you guys to let me know that you saw that, because it looks like they just reset the show. Because they don't want what I'm saying out. Because they're lying. They're a bunch of liars. That's all they do. That's all they know. That's all they care about is lying to keep their control. Now, I didn't do it, but that's what they do. Shout out to everybody on the live chat Rumble. We've got Royal Rumble #1 saying, what's up, Pastor? What's up, Warriors? Hang loose. Sorry I've been missing in action. God blessed me and I married the love of my life last Friday. I'm back to class, though. LOL. Good to have you back, my friend. Thank you. Congratulations for finding the love of your life. Boots #2 Warrior says, Warriors, come out and pray, yay. All right. Hello, James and Warrior family and new listeners. Hoping everyone is blessed today. And let's go ahead and hit that thumbs up button for James. Yeah, the only way that Rumble will give me any love is a thumbs up button. The more thumbs up, the algorithm puts it up. The less, well, that's we're screwed. Scorpion says, number 3 warrior, never been married, never been at peace. Well, sorry, Scorpion. Hang in there. Texas Militia number 4 warrior says, howdy, with the cowboy emoji. Thank you, Texas Militia. We know you're here. Jeffrey says, hey, y'all, did you see Italy and Nepal are fighting back? They got bigger balls than us. Well, they do because they fought against the food, and the food was poison, and it was wrecking their brains. And, well, they fought, and they, got the GMOs out of Europe. But, they fight, but they don't really fight, the government will just relax a bit and then hit them hard again, and it's just a repeat of just the same shit over and over. Next is, I believe it's Sheila saying, oh, congratulations, Royal Rumble. And A.M. Willis says, wish I wasn't awake, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you for being here, A.M. Willis. We appreciate it, new listener. And Sheila and Royal in Texas and everyone else is talking to each other. And then Jamie G555 says, can you explain Revelation 3:9? Well, let's just get into it. Revelation 3:9, because I don't have it memorized. Revelation 3:9 is a Bible verse from the book of Revelation that addresses the church in Philadelphia. Jesus states he will make the synagogue of Satan, those who falsely claim to be Jews, come and bow at the feet of the faithful, acknowledging God's love for them. So, yeah, it's pretty simple. Israel and what they're doing right now, because according to the Ethiopian canon, we're living in the Satan's little season. And they have a very, 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 very short time. And so when Jesus comes, right before this World War III that they have planned, which the Ethiopian canon says will never go full. It'll never go full. Because once they get the temple up and the Antichrist, whoever it's going to be, sits in it, right before he even sits, Jesus is going to come and wipe them all out. And then they're going to be forced to bow to the feet of the faithful, meaning all of us. I guess you could call us Goyim. So some say that that's going to happen by next year of July, because of Satan's little season is a season, which is 250 years out of 1,000. Remember, there's 4 seasons in a year, and 1,000 years is a day in heaven. So 250 years seems like a short season to me. So if Jesus gets 1,000 years to reign, then Satan gets a short reign, which is 250 years. And if that all started in 1776, and that's when the Bavarian Society started, the Illuminati, under Adam Weishaupt, well, that's when they really started to press in and control the world. So Jeffrey says, wow, the Saudi is buying up everything. Well, that's what they do. That's what they do. Let's get into shitty breaking news.
Welcome to Shitty Breaking News with your host, James Carner, offering his shitty opinion.
And that's what it is. It's my shitty opinion because, well, although I try to follow up on geopolitical, financial, all that other stuff, I can only interpret what I can interpret. I am not perfect at knowing everything because, everything isn't my strength. Some things I am pretty well versed in, but yeah, when it comes to what's going on in the world, I can only give you my shitty opinion. Vice President predicts there will be a government shutdown as Trump signals it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's what they want. Remember, Trump is working for the Orsini clan. The Orsini clan is against Chicago. Chicago is controlled by the Lee family, who is literally China and Russia. So that's what's happening. And so, Trump's going after the Chinese infiltration of America, which started thanks to Bush Sr. when he became CIA director. He made a deal with China. I don't know if it was just him solo or what, but the deal with China is simple. Send all work to China and crumble America. And that's what they've been doing since Bush Sr. Took control over America since the 60s. That's my best guess, but, I could be wrong. Michigan LDS Temple mass shooting, what we know about the victims. Well, it's simple. The Mormons are working for, I believe, they're working for someone, either the East or the West, either the Orsinis or Lee family. And what we saw with Charlie Kirk and what we're seeing with shootings on Mormon soil, it's a warning, as in, you better shape up and get with the program with us. Now, it could be that the Mormons were leaning towards China, Russia, and Orsini doesn't want that because the Federal Reserve is just dying. It's not in a good spot right now. So that could be happening. And so, the Orsini clan basically shot Charlie Kirk through order from Trump, I believe. And this is how they do their bidding. Military leaders voice concern over Hexas' new Pentagon strategy. Well, bring in all the generals and then prepare them for war with aliens. That's probably what the truth is. No, I don't think so. The Orsinis they're just not planning very good because they don't have spiritual support from the fallen angels. The fallen angels are steering towards China and Russia because that's where communism is going to begin in America. And so it doesn't matter if Israel wins or if Russia or China wins. If we're really in Satan's little season, then, we will win. The Christians who will stand firm against what they've been trying to do for the past 250 years in Satan's little season, which really makes sense. I've done at least 5 shows on Satan's little season, and 4 of them were about the King James version of Satan's little season, and I have now had to do a show on the Ethiopian canon because the Ethiopian canon actually makes more sense than the King James version, which has been hacked up and turned into a toll booth for God, meaning you cannot pass go unless you choose Jesus. So that makes it a control mechanism. That's all I have to say about that. YouTube agrees to pay Trump $24 million to settle lawsuit over January 6th suspension. Okay, well, tell us about why there were 250 FBI agents at the January 6th incursion. Yeah, even Kash Patel, who's supposed to be working for us, can't even figure that one out. Trump and Comey in escalating conflict with no off-ramp. Well, good luck, Comey. You messed with Trump. Trump hates your guts. Comey, you are working for China, Russia. You are a communist, and you say you're an American. I'm trying to help America. But no, you're working for the Lee family. And the Orsini family doesn't like that. So they're coming after you, and you're going to get the brunt of that. Now, the big elites, because they care about the work that you did, how you did such a great job hurting Trump and his campaign, well, they're going to go easy on you, Comey. So you don't have to worry about that. Your family will be well off and taken care of. Because, well, that's what happens when you are put on the stage as an actor. They're going to they're going to stage it. If they kill you, you're not going to be dead. You're going to go to Valhalla, which is probably some island off of Greenland where they put all of the martyrs. Yeah, because that's what they do. This isn't anything new under the sun. They are playing a game and playing against us. And pretty much that's all of the shitty breaking news. All right, we're going to go to a quick commercial. When we get back, we're going to talk about the Devil's Registry, and we're going to decode the Codex Gigas. Very interesting story, no doubt.
Do you have tax burdens? Do you carry personal liability? If so, let me tell you why you have tax burdens and personal liability. And if you stick with me until the end, I'll share a simple solution to reduce the burdens you carry. When you put assets in your name, you also carry the liability. And by setting up a corporation, LLC, or partnership, you also carry the liability for the share of ownership you have in these organizations. So when you receive a W-2 form, 1099, or a K-1 at the end of each year, that shows your liability for the assets you have carried in your name or your business name. The flow of liability works this way. You get a job, you take money in your name. When you are a contractor, you take money in your name. When you begin a business, you take money in the business name, which is set up with you as the owner. Nelson Rockefeller quoted, "The secret to success is to own nothing but control everything." He said this because when you own something in your name, you also own the liabilities. Introducing the solution. Begin an unincorporated association and remove assets out of your name while remaining in control and management of them. An unincorporated association is a state-registered entity that you can put assets into, is member-based and not tied to your name, has a tax-exempt EIN number, is private and not found when doing an online search. Whether you receive a 1099 or K-1 under your name, consider setting up your own unincorporated association and allow the association to be the owner of your assets and free yourself from the burden of personal liability. P.S. Join our affiliate program and receive payment for referrals.
All right, we're back to the show. Guys, have you ever heard of the Codex Gigas? Let me show you a picture. That is the Codex Gigas. Apparently, a monk who was possessed by the devil made the church lock him up into a room and set it on fire and basically made them kill him. But before they did it, he wrote this book, this strange book, and we're going to be talking all about that right now. So there are books, there's many out there, and then there are monuments. And the Codex Gigas is not merely a manuscript, it's a colossus stitched from the skins of over 100 animals. It's heavier than a man and rumored to have been written in a single cursed night. One night. Inside its flesh-bound walls are not just scriptures, but systems. Not just prayers, but patterns. A Bible, yes, but one paired with Josephus, Isidore, exorcisms, necrologies, and a full-page throne portrait of Satan himself. It's not a devotional. Apparently, it's a declaration. Now, the monks called it the giant book. The world calls it the Devil's Bible. But we call it what it really is, a registry. A registry of names, of spirits, of illnesses, of rituals. A multilingual ledger of breath and dominion written in a monastery that no longer exists, protected by emperors, stolen by armies, and nearly consumed by fire. And yet it still survives to this day. Why? Why has this book, among millions of medieval texts, been preserved with near religious devotion by kings, conquerors, and archivists? Why this one? Why do they protect it when the word of God is burned? Literally. Why do they enshrine the singular tame in a vault in Sweden? Or tomb, it's in a singular tomb in a vault in Sweden, while the rest of history fades away? Well, because it isn't just history. This book is architecture. It's spiritual architecture. It's ritual infrastructure. It's a sovereign document of a king, not of this world, but of another. Some say the monk who wrote it sold his soul to complete it. Others say the image of Satan is a taunt, and he's kind of a pussy. You know, look at this image of Satan. He looks kind of like a pussy, you know. Doesn't look that scary, you know. But that image has been shown all around the world. Others say the image of Satan is a taunt, but I say it's a signature. It's a contract that's sealed in ink and blood and preserved through empire, fire, and time. Not because it tells the truth, but because it contains the framework of deception. And I do believe that because of quantum computers and artificial intelligence, I believe that the world leaders have been able to decode this and figure it out. And I do believe that this was one of the helpers to the technology that we see today. One of. It is the framework of deception. Now, today, we open the Codex Gigas, not with gloves or reverence, but with eyes wide open. Not to admire, but to expose. Because somewhere in this registry of devils and dominions is the blueprint of a control system that still binds men today. And if this was the first breath-bound registry, meaning a list of names that were ritualized, therefore, whoever owns it owns the power of all of that breath, well, it's not a lost scroll or vaporous legend passed down by mystics in caves. It's real, tangible. It has power. And it's on display today in the National Library of Sweden. But calling it a book is like calling a cathedral a tent. Dude, it weighs over 165 pounds. It stands nearly 3 foot tall. 3 foot tall. It requires 2 people just to open it. Bound in wood and wrapped in animal skin, 160 of them, 160 books, by some estimates. Not paper, not parchment, flesh. This wasn't a book made for private reading. It was made to be carried like an ark, displayed like a relic, and feared like a weapon. Its construction alone is a statement of power. You don't build something like this unless you want it to last forever. And that's what makes the story so strange. It was allegedly written by a single man, Herman the Recluse. Herman. Great. Could have picked a name like Melvin. Melvin! But it was Herman the Recluse, a Benedictine monk who, according to legend, was condemned to be sealed alive within the walls of his monastery for some unknown offense. It was a living tomb, a slow death. But Herman made an offer. If the abbot would spare his life, he would write a book that would glorify their order for all eternity. A book that would contain all human knowledge, sacred and profane. Now, the abbot actually agreed. The abbot are the group of monks watching the monastery, and they agreed, thinking the task was impossible. But as midnight neared, Herman realized it was impossible. So he cried out, but not to God, but to the adversary himself, as legend goes. He made a pact with the devil. And by morning, the Codex Gigas was complete. That's the legend. That's a huge book. Animal skin, ink, and if you look at it, it looks like it was just professionally done, where it looked like a press did it. Now, but even without the myth, right, the book still screams rebellion. Its pages blend the sacred and the blasphemous side by side. The entire Latin Bible is there, yes, but so is Josephus, the ancient Jewish historian who accused his own people of starting the war with Rome. So is Isidore of Seville, whose etymology was one of the earliest encyclopedias. And right alongside scripture and scholarship, we find magical incantations, exorcisms, and cures for demonic possession. So it's not just a religious book. It is a manual of dominion, which means control and power over you. And it tells how to govern the body through medicine, how to govern the soul through scripture, and how to govern spirits through invocation. Sounds like what they're doing to us right now. And the material itself, vellum, or prepared animal skin is no accident. Fresh pages, or flesh pages, right? Breath-based ink, names inscribed into hide. The very form of the Codex Gigas echoes the registry concept that we've exposed again and again. Names written into flesh, books that bind the breath, contracts sealed in ink and blood. Even the layout of the book, the spacing, the size of the script, the symmetry of the margins is unnaturally perfect. Experts believe it was written by a single scribe over the course of decades. But not a single error mars the page. No corrections, no edits, not one. It was either done by a man under divine or demonic influence. Or it was transmitted from a source beyond the veil. So what is the Codex Gigas really? Well, it's a spiritual altar disguised as a manuscript. It's a registry of names, diseases, demons, and dominions written not to inform the soul, but to track it. Something mankind has been desperate to have. And this is how they began their registry project. So we must ask what their digital version actually looks like today. Well, behind every monument is a myth, and behind the Codex Gigas, the myth is as haunting as the book itself. And they say it began with a man named Herman the Recluse, a Benedict monk from the early 13th century, confined to the monastery of Padlazice in Bohemia. I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. According to legend, Herman committed a grave transgression against the monastic order, and what exactly he did is unclear. Some say heresy, others say pride or sorcery. I'm thinking sorcery. But the punishment was severe. He was to be bricked alive into the monastery wall, left to starve to death in isolation. Yeah, that's a thing they did back then. You know, no difference between that and what Israel's doing to Gaza. But before the sentence was carried out, Herman made a desperate plea. He claimed he could redeem himself by producing a book unlike any ever written. One that would bring eternal glory to the monastery, a book that would contain all knowledge. Not some, not a little, not a lot, but all knowledge. And the entire Bible, history, medicine, enchantments, rituals, calendars, and records, not over just a lifetime, but in a single night. That was an impossible promise. But yet, according to the myth, the abbot agreed, perhaps amused by the arrogance or perhaps hoping for a miracle. Herman began writing. But as the hours passed and midnight approached, he knew he couldn't fulfill the task. And so, the story goes, he turned not to God, but to Satan. He made a pact. Instead of a song, he got a book. And in exchange for his soul, the devil would complete the book. And by dawn, the Codex Gigas was finished. Hundreds of pages, immaculate lettering, perfect symmetry, a book that scholars say would take at least 25 to 30 years for one man to complete alone, if he worked day and night. And in the center of the manuscript, on folio 290, sits the image of the devil, or Satan, a full-page illustration with no text. Clawed hands, serpent tongue, staring straight at the reader. It is the only portrait in the book. No Christ, no apostles, no saints, just the devil enthroned, surrounded by darkness. Now, some say it was Satan's signature. Look what I can do. Others say it was the pride of the pact. His image forever inscribed into sacred flesh, a marker of ownership, a sigil. Remember we talked about what sigils are? It's a drawing or a logo that they can attach a demon entity to. Now, whether or not the legend is true is beside the point, because the power of this myth lies not in whether Herman made a pact, but in what the myth reveals about how the world understands knowledge, power, and rebellion. This is not just the story of a monk. This is a pattern, a reflection of the human condition. A man seeks forbidden knowledge. A man wants to live. A man wants to build something eternal. And in his desperation, he turns to the one who promises instant results. Sound familiar? Well, we talk about Satan does that all the time. He will make you a millionaire overnight, but he won't give you the wisdom to keep it. It's the very story of the Watchers, of Eden, of Babel, of Faust, of Silicon Valley. The legend of Herman the Recluse is not a medieval fairy tale either. It is a ritual narrative, repeated again and again throughout history. That power, knowledge, and speed come through rebellion. That you can bypass process by making the right deal. That you can rewrite the registry if you know who to call. Well, how did he know to call the fallen angels, the Watchers, or even Satan himself? I believe he was in trouble for sorcery. And the most chilling part, the story is actually timed. A single night. One revolution of the earth. One counterfeit creation cycle. That's what makes the legend, well, to some, believable. The devil doesn't give you time, he gives you a shortcut. So whether Herman made a pact or not, someone did. Because the Codex Gigas exists. And it should not. Not without help. Now, when you open the Codex Gigas to Folio 290, and you come face to face with the scholars call the Devil's Throne, a full-page image, no text, no explanation, just Satan. It's right there on the right. Enthroned, alone, and massive. And he fills the entire page, and it's the only image in the book. It's crouching between two towers, Joachim and Jacob and Boaz. He fills the entire page, crouching between two tigers, clawed feet splayed wide, with bulging eyes, hooked horns, and a serpent's tongue. His hands are raised, not in welcome, but as if to claim dominion. Wow. This is not medieval decoration. This is placement. This was done on purpose by the devil himself to get information out there, and he saw an opportunity and did it through Herman the Recluse. Ritual placement is what it was. Satanic. Because on the opposite page, there is another full-page illustration, a heavenly city, a bright, ordered, symmetrical sanctuary. The celestial Jerusalem, no angels, no people, just the architecture of paradise. What's up with that? Heaven and hell side by side. No other part of the Codex Gigas contains full-page art like this. So these are the only two images in the entire manuscript. Think about that. Over 300 pages of precise Latin script, and then suddenly two cosmic portraits staring at each other across the silent gap. What are we looking at here? Well, it's not theology. It's architecture. This is a mirror, an inversion, where you have good and evil. It's a spiritual gate. It's a choice set in flesh. As one page holds order and light, the other chaos and darkness. And right in between them sits you, the reader, the scribe, the soul. Now, this duality isn't accidental. It actually echoes the binary structure of ritual law, of registries, of ledgers of books of life and death. God's registry is always about names written or blotted out. And here in the Codex Gigas, that same principle is applied. To gaze upon Satan is to face the reality of dominion denied. And to behold the heavenly city is to remember what was lost. But there's something deeper here. In ritual magic and alchemical texts, dual images are not for education. They're for binding. It's a spell. One image draws energy, the other repels it, like a magnet. Together they create containment or a vortex, a symbolic cage, so to speak. Now, Satan on one page, heaven on the other. The very act of turning the page becomes a ritual motion, a flipping of allegiance, a movement from darkness to light, or light to darkness. As what Satan does is he does everything backwards. If you would read it according to Satan, you'd start from the last page and work your way to the front. Now, the devil in the Codex Gigas doesn't tempt, whisper, or accuse. He doesn't beg for worship. He rules, but alone. Enthroned, but with no chains, no cross, no redemption, no blood, just dominion. The page is meant to confront, not convert. And here's where the registry theory, becomes prophecy. This isn't just a drawing of Satan. It is a seal, an anchor point, drawn into the codex like a spiritual GPS coordinate. If this book was meant to function like a registry, then the devil's portrait is not artistic expression. It is legal signature, a mark of possession, a spiritual fingerprint. Now, in the canon that I've been working on, my own codex, I've explored how ancient documents act as legal frameworks in the unseen realm, how names, breath, and actions become codified into books. But what if this portrait isn't about the devil at all, but about the one who actually wrote it, the scribe himself, fighting the own duality that he's suffering with, since he first was a bad person, then became a monk, became a good person, and then slipped back into evil? What if this portrait isn't about the devil at all? It's about him. It's about the scribe and the contract, or the entry point of spiritual debt. Because you don't draw a being like that unless you have seen him, unless you have given him something. So the question isn't why Satan is in the book. The question is, who else is? And what did it cost them to be written there? Now, the Codex Gigas isn't just a massive thing in size. It's massive in scope. When you open its pages and you don't find actually a single book. You find many, 160. It is a canon within a canon, a curated vault of spiritual, medical, legal, and magical texts, all bound into one. It's not just a Bible. It's a library. And one that tells us exactly what kind of power the compiler sought to control. And at its core is the Latin Vulgate Bible, the canonical scripture of the Roman Church. But even here, there's a disturbance. The book of Acts and the book of Revelation, both of which deal with apostolic power and apocalyptic judgment, are missing. Well, why leave those out? I mean, was it censorship or design? Perhaps the message of resurrection and final judgment was seen as a threat to the dominion being encoded at that time. Then comes Josephus, the Jewish historian whose Antiquities of the Jews and Jewish War are included in full. Josephus is no neutral narrator. He paints the Jewish people as divided and self-destructive, suggesting that their temple fell because of inner corruption. Well, it did. But why include this in a Bible? Well, because Josephus gives historical legitimacy to imperial theology. He reinforces the idea that God removed one people and gave dominion to another. And then we find Isidore of Seville's etymology, it's weird, Etymologiae. I don't know. But it's an early encyclopedia, a catalog of worldly knowledge, alphabetized and categorized. Here, the codex shifts from spiritual truth to language, nature, logic, and law. It's an attempt to order reality. And Isidore's work becomes a spine for building your own legal framework. A registry not just of people, but of meaning itself. I've told you guys that how the devil works is he's not just down here pointing fingers at us. He's taking legal documentation up to the heavenly courts to judge us and get us, give and ask for permission to mess with us. That's what he does. That's what the devil is. He's the accuser, and he's like a lawyer that continues to file lawsuits against God's people in order to gain access to them to mess them up. So it's not only a legal framework, it's not only a Bible framework, it's also a medical manuscript rooted in Hippocratic theory. There are recipes, diagnoses, prescriptions for the body and the soul. Some treatments involve herbs, others rituals. And you'll find prayers for deliverance besides exorcisms and incantations. Now, at times, the Codex reads like a physician's grimoire. How did this monk know so much about biology? And it goes further. Also preserved are necrologies, lists of the dead. Not saints, not prophets, just ordinary monks and patrons. Names and dates etched into the registry of remembrance. Now, in my codex, I found that these are the entries in the breath ledger. I do believe that the Lee family and the Orsini family have registries of all the ritual killings that they have done between their families, and they can prove it on paper. But these are names that are recorded not for salvation, but for inheritance, control, and maybe ritual memory. These names that are inside this codex is what gives it power from the breath. The spark of God was stolen through the names of those monks that were sacrificed to make this book possible. So why bind all of this together? Well, I think the goal wasn't inspiration. It was to show Satan has infrastructure. Kind of a way of saying, or puffing up your feathers and saying, you don't know what I'm capable of. The Codex Gigas was never meant to uplift the soul. It was meant to govern it, to create a spiritual and legal framework by which power could be exercised over bodies through medicine, over minds through language, over spirits through ritual, and over breath through inscription. This was a master key, not just to knowledge, but to control. And there's copies of it everywhere. And imagine if someone today combined the Bible, the Patriot Act, the DSM, and a collection of Freemasonic rituals and wrote it all by hand onto human skin. Well, that's what the Codex Gigas is. It is a registry of dominion, how to control the world, wrapped in holiness, but engineered for spiritual surveillance. So it's not a mystery anymore. And it wasn't just what was included, it's what was paired with it. Scripture right beside spellcraft. Medicine right besides exorcism. Kings right beside demons. That was no accident. That's fusion. It was legal alchemy. Proof that pharmakia is the same thing as exorcism, meaning our illnesses in the world are demonically caused. And the scribe who built this canon, well, he knew exactly what he was doing. This was not a Bible. This was a sovereign document for a counterfeit kingdom, ready at a moment's notice when the devil is loosed after 1,000 years of being in the pit. And the scribe who built this canon knew exactly what he was doing. A sovereign document for a counterfeit kingdom. And for all its overwhelming bulk, this thing is huge. The Codex Gigas has gaps. 12 pages are missing. Carefully cut out by hand. They were not torn. They were not lost to time. They were removed deliberately. Clean. Surgical. As if someone somewhere didn't want what was there to survive. My question is simple. What was on those pages? Now, historians will tell you they were likely more necrologies. Lists of names of deceased monks or donors. Maybe. They'll even say these lists had little spiritual value and were removed later for space, privacy, or preservation. Yeah, right. Well, let's be honest. No one removes 12 consecutive pages from the world's most prized manuscript by accident. This wasn't a misprint. It was a purge. Something was in there so damning to Satan's kingdom and his works that it had to be removed before it was given to the public. Now, here's what we know. The missing pages occur near the center of the book, around the same sections that contain magical texts, prayers for protection, formulas of exorcism, and ritual names of God. Ritual names of God. The Codex Gigas transitions during these chapters from structured Vulgate scripture into something even darker, more prescriptive, more ritualized. It becomes functional, not devotional. So ask yourself this. If a registry contains names, contracts, and breath, the tools of dominion, what would you remove to keep that registry secret? Well, I would remove the binding clause, the invocation names, the pact terms and conditions, and the names of those who were bound. You see, in my own architecture, the canon that I've been writing, the codex of all the information exposing the enemy, there are dozens of texts in the esoteric files that I have that speak of heavenly and infernal registries. For example, the Book of Enoch describes watchers being judged and names being recorded. The Zohar speaks of books within books, some written in light, others in shadow. And my documents on the Goetia, sworn books of Honorius, and the Grimorium Verum, they all detail how the names of spirits and their controlling seals must be written precisely, often within flesh or sacred books. And that omission is, or misordering, causes them to become free. So what if these 12 pages were the registry of the fallen angels? What if they held names, not of monks, but of the entities themselves that we could use to bind and cast into the pit? What if those names held, or worse, legal instruction for invoking or binding those spirits? It's not just speculation. There are other grimoires like the Grand Grimoire or Caligula Solomonus, are also known to have had pages mysteriously disappear over time. Often these lost leaves contained the true name of the spirit or the final clause of a pact. And in order to bind an entity, you must know its name. And in my own canon, the idea that spiritual dominion is bureaucratic, legal, and archived, well, this is not a book that simply lost its place. This is a void of contract, a blank space in the spiritual ledger, a silence where something was once legally recorded and then hidden. So who removed them? Was it a monk trying to protect the world from the truth? Or was it a king or a bishop or an occult order seeking to hide the clauses they themselves were under? Believe me, if you had the names of the 200 watchers, you could change the world. But more chillingly, where are those pages now? Who has them? Elon Musk. That's my joke for Elon Musk. Or Domenico Napoleon Orsini? Or the Lee family? Is it in a vault? Is it on top of an altar? And what modern registry has absorbed those names and put them into their supercomputers? Because if they held the terms of dominion, then the new system we're living in, digital, predictive, biometric, may be the fulfillment of what was written on now missing flesh. Do you understand what I'm saying? This could have been the codex for creating the modern day computer and replacing the old temples. What's also missing is languages. The languages of dominion. One of the most overlooked Yet most revealing elements of the Codex Gigas lies not in what it says, but in how it says it. Could be a language within a language. And this isn't a book written in just one script. Throughout the manuscript, we find traces of multiple alphabets: Latin, Hebrew, Greek, Glagolitic, and Cyrillic. Huh? These were not all necessary for the Vulgate Bible or Isidore's Encyclopedia. Their presence is deliberate. These are languages of power. And in the spiritual world, language is dominion. In the registry theory that drives the canon that I've been writing, names are not just identifiers, they are legal signatures. They're a stamp in the candle wax. They are the crest of the family. And legal control over the spirit realm requires exact names written in exact scripts. One wrong letter and the seal breaks. One shift in language and the contract fails. The vibration has to be perfect. So why include so many scripts? Well, I think the Codex Gigas wasn't just meant to instruct. It was meant to bind, to seal, to regulate. It was designed to be universal across linguistic barriers, to allow the monk or the spirit using the book to speak across realms and nations. This is spiritual interoperability. Let's break that down. Latin was the language of law and empire. It was used for earthly dominion. Hebrew was the language of covenant, the divine registry. Greek was the language of philosophy and theology, interpretive dominion. Glagolitic and Cyrillic were sacred Slavic scripts used in early translations of the Bible, but also in esoteric magical texts and incantations. Now, when you put them together, this becomes a multi-layered linguistic weapon, not just a book, a device, a tool for enacting ritual authority over souls, diseases, demons, and even time itself. You're not going to hear that about this book. And it doesn't stop there. Scribes and scholars have long noted the Codex Gigas' unnatural consistency in a letter formation. Every line, every character, there is no deviation. There's no fatigue, as though the hand that wrote it was either mechanical or possessed. That's not human. That's ritual. It had to be perfect. And ritual writing is more than aesthetics. It's mathematical. It's frequency encoding. In Kabbalistic tradition, each letter has a numerical value. In angelic script, each curve represents a sound key to invoke spiritual intelligences. And in the canon that I've been writing, breath and vibration are actual currency in the unseen economy. So the Codex Gigas may contain non-verbal signatures, hidden not in the meaning of the text, but in the shape of the writing itself. There is a reason Enochian magic uses an entire invented alphabet. There is a reason Satanists protect the exact formation of sigils. There is a reason secret societies teach symbol over sentence. Because in spiritual systems of control, the symbol binds more tightly than the word. And if you really want to bury a truth, you hide it in plain sight. In a language no one bothers to study. So what does that mean for the Codex? Well, it means it's not just a book. It's a ritual machine. It's a spiritual interface. It opens up the veil. It's a written software code that can still be activated by those who know the language and those who have the missing papers. The 12 pieces of paper, which there were 12 disciples in the Bible. So we must ask, who is using it today? Because if this registry was created in 5 alphabets, then perhaps the beast system now emerging in our digital age is the 6th. That's interesting how Google changed their name to Alphabet. So was it decoded? Well, for centuries, scholars, mystics, historians, and occultists, they've tried to unlock the Codex Gigas, not just to read it, any Latin scholar can do that, but to decode it, to uncover the hidden purpose, the embedded rituals, the layered meanings beneath its script and structure. But here's the truth. No one has successfully decoded it yet. Not in the way that they had hoped. Not in the way that breaks the seal and reveals the blueprint. And yet the book continues to exert influence. It continues to resonate. It continues to be protected. So, let's examine what has and has not been discovered. Paleographers agree that the Codex Gigas was likely written by a single scribe. They believe it was written by one dude. Now, that's already suspect. The consistency of the lettering, the symmetry of the margins, the absence of corrections, it's inhuman in discipline. Some estimate it would take 25 to 30 years to complete, assuming 6 hours of writing per day, every day. But the ink, it does not fade. The hand doesn't falter. The form doesn't break. It's as if it was created in the future and sent back in time. Or it was as if the book was dictated from beyond, interdimensional. And some have analyzed the layout of spacing for mathematical codes, looking for Kabbalistic numerology, gematria, cipher wheels. Others have used modern AI models to scan for textual anomalies, hidden symbols, or marginal glosses. But all they find is perfection and silence. But silence speaks. Silence is the loudest in the room. Because what if the Codex Gigas was never meant to be decoded in the way that we decode puzzles today? What if its encryption is not linguistic but spiritual in itself? In the stuff that I've been writing and researching, I have long proposed that the elite work in registries, names, not as encryption puzzles, but as frameworks of layered access. The Codex then may not contain a secret. It may be the secret. A ritual object whose presence activates something unseen. Not a key, so to speak, but an actual door. Why else is it so close to the Hadron Collider? And consider this, no scholar can explain why the devil's image is in there. To them, it makes no sense. It doesn't belong in any known liturgical sequence. It has no precedent, no postscript, no theological note. It simply just exists. It's seated, it's enthroned, and has been unchallenged. That's not art. That's a claim. Now, National Geographic actually funded a deep study of the manuscript. They actually digitized it. They measured ink density. They analyzed pigment. They investigated binding methods. They found nothing unnatural. And yet, no one wants to keep it open to that portrait for long. Why? Because some books do not speak to the mind. They speak to the air. Huh. You mean the principalities and rulers of the air? And in the absence of a cipher or a codex key, we must consider another possibility. The Codex Gigas was not written to be decoded, but to be read by something else. An angelic being, perhaps? And in the absence of the cipher, it has to be read by something else. So what if the book is not a message to man, but a message to spirits? What if the consistent hand, the unbroken flow, the ritual placement of languages and images, the perfection of form was designed not for us, but for the watchers? For fallen ones, for entities who do not read meaning, but structure. Because in the world of high ritual, form is function. Geometry becomes invocation. Proportion becomes praise. And a book like this may not say anything at all to the human readers, but to the spiritual realm, it might be singing. So no man has decoded the Codex Gigas. They can't. But something did. Something received it, and perhaps something still guards it today. Now, the Codex Gigas did not remain locked away in some forgotten monastery. It moved, and the hands it passed through tells us everything we need to know about its true value. Not as scripture, but as an object of spiritual technology. In the 16th century, the manuscript found itself in the possession of Emperor Rudolf II, one of the most enigmatic rulers of the Holy Roman Empire. Rudolf was no ordinary monarch. He was obsessed with alchemy, astrology, necromancy, and occult science. He surrounded himself with mystics, charlatans, and visionaries, and his court was filled with books, not just of law or theology, but of ritual power. He wasn't trying to rule Europe. He was actually trying to unlock the universe. Same with Ilamu. Rudolf amassed one of the largest collections of esoteric works in history, and including texts by John Dee, the magician who claimed to speak with angels through Enochian language. He hosted Edward Kelly, who conjured spirits in his court, and he preserved the Codex Gigas like a weapon, locking it inside the Imperial Library of Prague, a city already pulsing with Hermetic symbols, Templar maps, and Masonic architecture. So why would a king keep such a heavy, obsolete manuscript in his collection? Because he knew it wasn't obsolete. He knew it had power. He knew it would open doors. Because he didn't see it as a book, he saw it as a vessel. And when Rudolf's reign collapsed into religious war, the Codex didn't disappear. It was taken, but not destroyed, by Swedish forces during the 30 Years' War. In 1648, it was seized as part of the spoils of war and brought to Stockholm, where it remains today, kept in the Royal Library of Sweden under the codename Devil's Bible. Now think, why didn't the church destroy it? Why didn't Protestants burn it? Why didn't rival kings sell it? Because from the top down, Catholic, Protestant, Imperial, and occult, they all knew this book was different. So they preserved it. They moved it. They guarded it. And here's where it gets even stranger. In 1697, a fire tore through the royal castle in Stockholm. How convenient. The building was absolutely consumed. Entire rooms of rare texts, priceless maps, and imperial decrees were reduced to ash. But somehow, the Codex Gigas, it survived. It actually was thrown out a window. The story goes that it was thrown out of a window just in time. And that's what they say. But that's not what really happened. Because the elite don't accidentally save anything. They let the rest burn, and they preserved the Codex. It was moved before the fire, just like the Ark, just like Alexandria's library, just like the Spear of Destiny, just like all of their other spiritual weapons. And today, well, the book sits in climate-controlled glass, treated like a museum artifact, but no one reads from it. It is not in rotation. It is not opened in public. And the folio with Satan's portrait rarely displayed. Not because of superstition, but because they fear its activation. So you don't protect a dead object. You protect a dormant one. And that's what the Codex Gigas is. It is a dormant technology. A technology weapon from an earlier age of control. And those who have ruled empires from Prague to Stockholm have treated it accordingly. So now we must ask. If they protected it this fiercely, what are they protecting it from? Or worse, who are they keeping it for? If it's destroyed, would the world change? So let's stop calling it a book. Let's stop pretending the Codex Gigas was ever meant for devotion, contemplation, or even spiritual growth. Because what we're looking at is not a sacred artifact. It is a registry, an early prototype of a system we now see mirrored across history, across religions, and now all across the digital world. Everything about the Codex points to registry logic. It contains names, diseases, rituals, judgments, contracts, and images of both heaven and hell. It moves from the narrative to the functional, from the divine to the demonic. And all of it is highly structured, numbered, cataloged, and layered with legal and linguistic precision. This is what your canon has long identified. That spiritual power is archived. That what we call demons, angels, or even souls are not just spiritual phenomena, but legally bound entities in a cosmic registry. And if that's true, then the Codex Gigas was not trying to preserve knowledge. It was trying to contain it, to lock it in the flesh, to inscribe it in time. Think of this. A book that combines the Vulgate, Josephus, Isidore, exorcisms, herbal medicine, local bohemian events, and portrait of Satan. That's not theology. That's administration. The first organization or company. And what came after proves the pattern. The Talmud became a registry of oral and written law. The Kabbalah mapped names of God into numeric code. The Zohar created a commentary system that reorganized scripture into energy systems in the Sephirot. The Clavicula Solomonus and other grimoires laid out names, seals, and invocation formats. The Enochian texts of John Dee introduced a whole new angelic alphabet. And now today, my research and the registry working is doing the same. But this time, I'm exposing it. I'm not trying to control it. And what the Codex Gigas began in flesh, today's elites seek to finish in data. Through biometric data, DNA, digital ID, quantum signature. I've said it before. The registry didn't die. It just evolved. And the Codex was the alpha form. The foundational hardware. It combined medicine, scripture, and law into one tome or tomb. But now, the Bible is digital. Medicine is algorithmic. Law is predictive. Breath is monetized. Names are encrypted in databases. Believe me, AI is going to be doing modern medicine. The registry is now hidden in the cloud. But the pattern is the same. Bind the soul through the name, record it through the breath, and extract dominion through consent. And just like Codex Gigas, none of it looks evil on the surface. No, it wasn't made for the giants. The same dominion waits for consent. So the Codex Gigas was not a relic. It was a signal, a blueprint, a legal instrument of spiritual control. And now, throughout my work, I've uncovered that it was not isolated. It was the first registry for the elites, for the 13 black nobility families. And it will not be the last either. The Codex Gigas still exists, and that's the part that haunts me. It wasn't burned, it wasn't lost, it wasn't hidden in a cave or buried beneath centuries of ash. It survived. It survived the wars, the fires, the schisms, the inquisitions, monarchies fell, empires collapsed, but the registry, this book names, cures, rituals, and domination remained intact. Which forces us to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. Who is still bound to it? If this was just a manuscript, just ink on animal skin, then time would have turned into dust, but it didn't. The Codex was preserved like an artifact of ongoing importance, like a legal document whose terms have not yet expired. So let's imagine for a moment that the legend is true, that a monk in desperation invoked the adversary and received a complete system in return, that this wasn't just a collection of texts, but a ritual contract signed, sealed, and recorded. And if that's true, then we're not just looking at a story of the past, we're looking at divine covenant. A registry doesn't just record names. It records rights, deeds, debts, and inheritance. And unless those names are blotted out, unless the contract is broken, then the covenant stands. Whose spirits were invoked? What kingdoms were founded upon its terms? And most chillingly of all, what happens when those terms come due? Because the Codex Gigas is a living symbol of man's oldest temptation. To bypass God, to grasp power, to merge scripture and sorcery, and to build an empire on sacred text corrupted by pride. The heavenly city and the devil's throne still face each other. And the space in between is not empty. It's us. It's always been us. Because every generation must choose. Will we live as names written in the book of life or as entries in a counterfeit registry? And maybe the Codex Gigas still survives because it's a mirror, a silent witness, a preserved record of what happens when man makes a deal in the dark and calls it light. So yeah, someone's still bound to it. Maybe a lineage, maybe a church, maybe an entire system, but the registry still breathes. And now by exposing it, we place a name back where it belongs. Not in the devil's ledger, but in the hands of the one who writes in light, not ink. And the question we leave with today is this: which registry holds your name? Me? I'm in the book of life. Even though I am a wretched scum, God still loves me. We began this journey with the book, a massive, mysterious, flesh-bound manuscript, but as we've seen, the Codex Gigas is far more than a medieval curiosity. It's a spiritual artifact, a legal ledger. It's a ritual machine, and perhaps the first attempt in recorded history to unite divine law, human knowledge, and demonic contract under one written authority. It's a registry. And if you've been following my show, you'd understand what a registry is now. A registry of names, diseases, dominions, rituals, and rebellion. A carefully constructed architecture of control, wrapped in sacred language and sealed with the portrait of Satan himself. And what began in a monastery in Bohemia has echoed forward through empires, through wars, through revolutions, all the way to the world that we inhabit now. Because the spirit of the Codex never died. It simply changed form. It moved from vellum to data, from script to code, from names in ink to identities in the cloud. The registry has gone digital. But the contract remains spiritual, and today, as the world rushes into systems of biometric control, quantum identity, and AI-driven breath extraction, the legacy of the Codex Gigas is not dead. It's fulfilled. But here's what they didn't count on: that we would remember where we come from, Eden. That we would trace the registry back to its source. That we would stand between the devil's portrait and the heavenly city and choose. Because this show, this canon, this scroll we build together is not just research, it's resistance. It's the unwriting of their registry, the exposing of their infrastructure, and the restoring of names to the only ledger that matters, the Book of Life. Let the kings protect their codex, while we build the real kingdom on earth.
Why do 75% of people feel exhausted all the time? The answer might surprise you. In the 1920s, Standard Oil decided to dive into medicine. They pushed synthetic petroleum into our drugs. Sure, it masked symptoms, but it wrecked our guts. Our good bacteria, which fight off parasites and heavy metals, got wiped out by crude oil. But here's the good news. We can fix this by going back to nature. Introducing Elite Potion, the world's top detox program. It restores your good bacteria by removing toxic threats like aluminum, strontium, barium, and parasites. Imagine feeling energized and alive again. They said there couldn't be a pill that did it all. We invented it. Visit elitepotion.com and reclaim your health from synthetic pharmaceuticals. Your body will thank you.
This has been Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner. Tune in tomorrow night when God gives me another revelation to tell you guys all about. God bless you, God keep you, and God thank you for supporting my show. Go to jamescarner.com and sign up for my newsletter. That's the only way I can get a hold of you if I get shut down. And download my free books. There's 3 of them. They're all yours. Have at it. And go to elitepotion.com and sign up for my award-winning detox program of parasites and heavy metals. You'll feel better. It'll protect the temple. It's better for us. And if you could all do me one big favor, if you could all just try to love your neighbor, well, I do believe this world would be a better place. We'll see you tomorrow.